Vanakkam. Hello friends. We have been seeing about the Kadai Vallalhal, the last 7 great patrons of the Sangam age. In the previous episode, we saw the history of Malayamman Tirumudi, the most prominent among the Malayamman lineage that ruled from Maladu. He earned the epithet Thervan Malayan because of possessing numerous chariots, and he was vanquished by the Chola king Killivalavan. In this episode, we go back in time by about 100 years to the early part of the 1st century Common Era to look at one of the most powerful rulers of the time, Ay Andiran, the king of the Ay dynasty. In his chronology of the early Tamils, K.N. Sivarajapillai points out that it would be wrong to call him a chieftain based on the later Sangam period when the Moovendar had ruled supreme and came to be known as kings, while the rest of the rulers like Nannan and Adiyaman came to be known as chieftains. The Ay kingdom was equally powerful to the Cheras, the Cholas and the Pandyas during early Sangam period. Their large kingdom extended from the mountainous regions south of the Coimbatore Gap in the Western Ghats down to Kanyakumari in the south. The term Ayar meant a shepherd clan, from which the name of the kingdom Ay was derived, a relic of a pastoral overlord of the Mullai region evolving into a monarch. Their dominion ran north-south right through the middle of the southernmost part of the peninsula and divided the Cholas and the Pandyas in the east from the Chera country in the west. These regions also went by the name Venadu, which meant the land of the bamboo forests. Andiran was a powerful sovereign of this kingdom who enjoyed the status of an independent monarch on par with the Moovendar. His ancestors had ruled these regions from as early as 250 BCE, opines KNS. According to him, one Hidaraja recorded by Emperor Ashoka in his famed Rock Edicts denoted the Ay dynasty. Rock Edict 13 of the Shahbaz Garhi version reads, "And he called Alikasutra further in the south, where the Chodas and the Pandyas dwell, as far as Tambapani, likewise where the Hidda king dwells, as recorded in the Epigraphica Indica." Here, Tambapani referred to the river Tamrabarani, and wherein dwells Hidaraja referred to the Podiyal mountains, that part of the Western Ghats that lay south of the Coimbatore Gap. KNS opines that the name Hidda that northern scholars were unable to identify is a northern aspirate variant of the Tamil term Idda, Idaya, Idayar, a synonym with Ayar, which appears in the singular form as Ay, meaning a shepherd or a goat herder. Thus, the antiquity of the Ay rulers mentioned in the Sangam literary works goes back to 250 BCE or possibly earlier, and their importance is vouched for by the fact that they find a separate mention in Emperor Ashoka's enumeration of the early South Indian rulers. Ptolemy, the Greek astronomer and navigator, in his records that belong to the 1st century Common Era, has recorded the names of many inland cities of South India. He records the names of the Ay kings as Ayas and mentions the regions between the river Periyar and river Pazhai, which is recorded as river Baris. The Ay country of Venadu lay on the western shore between Kottaru and Adankodu, that is modern-day Nagarkoil. Ptolemy locates the towns of Melkunda and Ilankon. While Melkunda is identified with modern-day Nirkundram, Ilankon is matched with Vilavankodu. Ptolemy also records Kumari, both a cape and a town, that is Kanyakumari, and Kotiara as a metropolis, that is modern-day Kottaru. This again goes to establish the early time period of Ay Andiran. Ay Andiran was a liberal patron to many a Sangam poet. Urayur Yenicheri Mudamosiyar, Thurayur Vodankilar, and Kuttuvan Kiranar were his contemporaries. Here, Enicheri Mudamosiar comes across as a very important lateral link poet, having sung 8 poems in praise of Andiran in the Purananuru. Enicheri Mudamosiar has also sung the praise of the Chera king Anduvan Cheral and the Chola sovereign Mudithalaikko Perunarkilli. This serves as the key lateral link in establishing the contemporaneity of Andiran with these rulers, and it is based on this that KNS assigns an early date belonging to the first quarter of the 1st century Common Era to Andiran's rule. Andiran's generosity as one of the Kadayelu Vallalhal is eulogized by Enicheri Mudamosiar in the Purananuru poem 129 that goes, Ay Andiran அடுபோர் அண்ணல் இரவலர்க்கு ஈத்த யானையின் கரவின்று வான மீன்பல பூப்பின் ஆனாது ஒருவழி கருவழியின்றி பெருவெள் எண்ணின் பிழையாது மண்ணே. Look at the dense stars that appear on a cloudless night in the sky. Then imagine them to be even denser so that there is not a single gap and the night sky is lit by the light from these bright stars. Now, the number of elephants gifted by Andiran to those patronized by him will equal those number of stars he sings. The Ay territory, situated in the Western Ghats, made of dense mountainous forests, was teeming with pachyderms, and Mudamosiar continues in the next Puram poem, விளங்குமணி கொடும்போன் ஆய் நின்னாட்டு இளம்பிடி ஒரு சூல் பத்து ஈனுமோ. I, wearing gleaming sapphire jewels. In your country, do young female elephants give birth to 10 calves at a time? The poet was in awe of the sheer number of elephants that Andiran was gifting away to the bards. And in the continuing verses, he records a very interesting piece of history. நின்னும் நின் மலையும் பாடி வருணர்க்கு இன்முகம் கரவாது உவந்து நீ அழித்த அண்ணல் யானை எண்ணின் கொங்கர் குடகடல் ஓட்டிய ஞான்றை தலைப்பெயர்த்திட்ட வேலினும் பலவே. If the number of elephants that you happily gave away were counted, they would be more in number than the number of spears left back by the Congers when you chased them back into the western seas. Interestingly, the majestic elephant gets the epithet Annal Yane in quite a few Puram poems. Now, the Kongar were an equally ancient clan who ruled over the regions of Kudanadu, that is modern day Coorg in Karnataka. They seem to have attacked Ay Andiran from the western seas, that is today's Arabian Sea. Andiran must have possessed some sort of naval fleet with which he drove them back. Now, we have seen in a much earlier episode on the Chera king Velkelukuttuvan, who actually comes 2 generations later, of how he rallied a naval fleet that surrounded the Kadambas at sea and routed them. This earned him the epithet Kadal Pirakotiya Velkelukuttuvan. The long exposed coastline made these rulers vulnerable to sea attacks even at that early time, and they seem to have possessed some rudimentary form of navy. In yet another Puram poem, Mudamosiar records a very interesting scenario. Purananuru poem 132 begins, Mun ulluvone, pin ullinene. Who I should have thought before, I thought about later. Narandai narumpul meenda kavari, kuvalai painjunai parihi, ayala, தகரத்தன் நிழல் பிணையொடு வதியும் வடதிசை அதுவே வான்தோய் இமயம் தென் திசை ஆஐ குடியின்றாயின் பிறழ்வது மண்ணோ இம்மலர்தலை உலகே. In the north, on the sky-high Himalayas, a yak eats the fragrant narandai grass, drinks water from a spring which has a lot of kuvalai flowers, that is the blue color water lilies, and rests with his mate in the shade of a taharam tree. If it were not for the lineage of Ay in the south, the world would have turned upside down. Now, the narandam grass is a fragrant variety of grass native to the Himalayas, and the poet records how a yak was grazing on it and then resting under the shade of a cool taharam tree. The scene is straight out of a Himalayan backdrop. Now, how did a poet living almost 2000 kilometers away Imagine this scenario. Dr. Balakrishnan, in his Journey of a Civilization, notes that these are carried forward memories passed down through an oral tradition generation after generation among the Dravidian people who at one point of time should have lived all over the subcontinent. He establishes this theory with the help of toponyms, that are place names in Tamil, found scattered across Afghanistan and Pakistan till date. And I was surprised to find a range in the Himalayas named Nilgiris situated in Nepal. An excellent poem rendered by Mudamosiar establishes the very high ethical standards that were prevalent in those Sangam times. Puram 134 goes, இம்மை செய்தது மறுமை காமெனும் அறவிலை வணிகன் ஆஐ அல்லன் பிறரும் சான்றோர் சென்ற நெறியென ஆங்கு பட்டன்று அவன் கைவன்மையே. I is not like a businessman who thinks that good deeds are done in this birth only to ensure a better birth in the next life. His generosity is because of noble men before him who have followed the right path. So even while giving, I had no vested interest to garner the benefit of giving, that is punya, accumulated to ensure a better birth in the next life. What a noble thought. And look at the word used, ara vilai vanigan, a trader who follows a fair price policy. A similar thought is expressed by Thurayur Vodankilar, a contemporary poet, in the Puram poem 36 that goes, Aa angu enai pagayum ariyum nan ai enak karudi peyarethi vaayara nin isai nambi, it starts. Thinking that I will vanquish our enemy, that is poverty, we have come here to sing your glory. We have climbed through the wasteland with scorching sun. When you shower us with wealth, it is true charity. While those who give, expecting something in return, are only aiding themselves and are not truly charitable. Ninakku ottadu nee naadi, nalhire vidumadi parisil, அல்குலும் தன்புனல் வாயில் துறையூர் முன்துறை நுண் பல மணலினும் ஏத்தி உண்குவம் பெரும நீ நல்கிய வளனே. So you determine what is right, give us gifts and send us away. May your living years be larger than the fine sands on the shores of Thurayur. Karikannanar, a poet who comes a couple of generations later, mentions I in a poem in Nattinai. In an Agam setting where the confidant tries to cheer up the heroine, she shows in the sky of how rain clouds have gathered and the monsoons are about to set in. Now the hero had promised to come back before the monsoons, and so she consoles the heroine saying that he would be back soon. And the verses go, Madande, உவாக்கன் தோன்றுவ ஓங்கி வியப்புடை இரவலர் வருவோம் அளவை அந்திரன் புறவையெதிர்ந்த தொகுத்த யானை போல உலகம் உவப்ப ஓது அரும் வேறுபல் உருவின் ஏர்தரும் மழையே. Karikannanar compares the rain clouds gathering in the sky to the herds of elephants gathered by Ay Andiran to bestow upon the needy coming to him. Now Paranar, the famed Sangam poet of a much later generation, has also rendered two poems in the Agananuru that refer to the generosity of Ay Andiran. In an Agam poem 152, Paranar mentions along with Andiran, Nalli and Nannan, and the heroine's beauty is compared to the lands of these patrons. And singing about Andiran, Paranar goes, Vallinum Vallarayinum சென்றோர்க்கு சால் அவிழ் நெடுங்குழி நிறைய வீசும் மாஅல் யானை ஆஐ காணத்து தலையாற்று நிலைய சேயுயர் பிறங்கள் வேய் அமைக்கண்ணிடை புரையி சேய ஆயினும் நடுங்கு துயர்தருமே. He filled with rice the deep foot bowls of bards who went to him, whether they were skilled or not. Vallinum vallar ayinum. The mountains of Ay are covered with a dense forest full of elephants. Even though she is far away, the thought of her arms give me shivering pain. Her arms, which are smooth like the spaces between the nodes of bamboo growing on the banks of the river Talayaru that runs in the valley adjacent to the tall mountains of Ay. Andiran's rule seemed to have continued for a long time, ending upon his death. The contemporary poet Kuttuvan Kiranar has rendered a poem upon the demise of Andiran in the subdivision that is the Thurai Kaiyara Nilai, indicating a situation of grieving upon the passing away of a loved one. Purananuru 240 goes, Aadu nadai puraviyum kalirum therum Vada yanar நாடும் ஊரும் பாடுனர்க்கு அருகா ஆய் அந்திரன் கோடையேந்து அல்குல் குறுந்தொடி மகளிரோடு காலன் என்னும் கண்ணிலி உய்ப்ப. Ay Andiran gave away to the bards horses, elephants, chariots and vast lands. Now he has gone to the upper world accompanied by his women wearing fine bangles. The god of death, the cruel one, has taken him. Flames with bright light burned his body on one side of the wasteland full of the kalli chedi. புல்லென் கண்ணர் புரவலர் காணாது கல்லென் சுற்றமொடு கையழிந்து புலவர் வாடிய பசியர் ஆகி பிறர் நாடு படு செலவினர் ஆயினர் இனியே. The eyes of poets have become dull. Their families have become sad and they feel helpless. Distressed with hunger, they move to the lands of other kings. That he was accompanied by his women, though, is quite a disturbing thought, as it indicates the prevalence of sati even then. Mudamosiyar renders a poem in the same Kaiyar Nilai. Purananuru 241 goes, Tinter இரவலர்க்கு ஈத்த தந்தார் அந்திரன் வருவோமென்ன ஒன்தொடி வஜ்ரத் தடக்கை நெடியோன் கோயிலுள் போர்பொரு முரசம் கரங்க ஆர்ப்ப எழுந்தன்றால் விசும்பினானே. As Ay Andiran, the great one, wearing cool garlands, ascended the heavens, the one who gifted sturdy chariots to those in need, Indran with his vajrayudam and glowing bracelets awaits to welcome him with roaring drums, the sounds of which fill the skies. Now this is the common meaning given by scholars like Avai Duraisamy Pillai, whereas the actual interpretation of the words Vajrat Tadakkai Nediyon Koyilur should be subject to re-evaluation in my opinion. Vajrayudam is the thunderbolt weapon of Lord Indra, the head of the Devas. Had he caught the popular imagination of the Tamil people even at that early time? The term Nediyon, denoting backwards in time and greatness, here could simply refer to an ancestor. Munnir Viravin Nediyon Nannir Pahuruli Manalilum Palave, sings the poetess Nettimayar in a Purananuru poem while praising an ancestor of the Pandya lineage. And the very word Vajram has several meanings in Tamil. Very strong, the resin of a tree, a weapon used by wrestlers, and hard diamond. Vajranadu goes the name of a country mentioned in the Silappadiharam and Kalaviyalurai, and it refers to a coastal town abutting the Pandya kingdom, exactly where the Ay territory was located. Tadakkai meant strong and long arms. So Vajrat Tadakkai Nediyon could have simply meant the weapon-wielding, mighty armed warrior ancestors of Ay Andiran, waiting in the heavens to receive their progeny. Many a line in the corpus of the early Tamil poems have been interpreted by later commentators out of context and need to be re-evaluated. So what became of the Ay dynasty after Ay Andiran? While there is no way of knowing who came to the throne next from references in the Sangam works, we do see that the lineage continued for a very long period of time. 3 Ay kings are mentioned in the Sangam works: Ay Andiran, Ay Thidiyan and Ay Adiyan. They were independent sovereigns of the Podiyil hills. An Ay Anan is mentioned in some works, but he was a commander of the Chola army. Now it was in the time of the third ruler of the Ay dynasty, Ay Adiyan, that the Podiyil dominion was invaded by Pasumon Pandyan and annexed to the Pandya kingdom. The Ayes seem to have sunk to the level of feudatories of the Pandyas and never regained their position as independent monarchy after this time. But they did rule for a very long time, as is evidenced by the mentioning of one Karunan Tadakkan, an Ay ruler in the 9th century Common Era in the Travancore archaeological series, points out K.N. Sivaraja Pillai. He says, and I quote, "The history of the Ay kings belongs to one of the earliest chapters in Tamil history. The glories of their rule have been buried deep under the ruins of ancient monarchies which fell to pieces before the destructive wars of the Tamil triumvirs. One has to patiently dig beneath the later accumulations for scattered facts which might enable piecing together the history of this long lost line of rulers. We will continue with the exploration of the history of yet another Kadayelu Vallal in the next episode. Vanakkam.